I have a story to share this time around. And also, I wanted to just say that these types of videos that I make are titled Practical Magic within my YouTube channel. And that's because it's basically taking real life scenarios, stuff that happens to me in my life, and giving examples of how I integrate that using spiritual perspective. So it's really rubber meets the road, real examples from life. So I find these to be very useful, very applicable to everyone's life. So let's go ahead and dive in. So I recently had an experience where we almost got a dog. So first I'll just begin with the story. I want to clarify that it's not really about the story. The story is to give reference so that we can dive in with some understanding, with some sort of frame of reference, right? To then apply the concepts and how that is used for awakening or healing the mind. So here goes, guys. Here's the story. So one day I was taking my daughter to a play date. I dropped her off at her friend's house and then quickly headed to a park that was right around the corner to do a session with a client. And while I go to the park with my son, I'm pushing him in a stroller, there's this dog that is playing in the little stream at the park, and then he starts to follow us around the park, and he's very friendly and just has a really good vibe to him. And from my perspective, of course. And sooner than later, 15 minutes passes and I realize, he's really just following us around and I don't think his family is here. Maybe this dog has gotten out, and I notice he's wearing a collar. So I end up calling the number on the collar, and it turns out, yes, he had gotten out, he had jumped a lady's fence, and also that the dog is up for adoption. She had been fostering him for just a few days, and apparently the fence was a little bit too short for his skill level of jumping. So right then it started to click. I was like, my heart was just like, okay, I think that if he doesn't have a home yet, we would be interested in adopting the dog. And I feel all this rush of excitement, and we go through the process, and it turns out it's okay. Our landlord says we can have a dog, and we do a trial adoption of this dog where we want to make sure that he jives with our family because I have kids and stuff like that. So we do a trial adoption, and the dog comes and stays with us, and we're having a great old time, feeling all the blissful feelings of just having a new pet. And on the third day, it is one of my daughter's birthday parties, and the kids run out the front door. I had a bunch of younger kids at my house having a party. They run out the front door, and it didn't shut all the way. And the dog followed them outside, and I saw it happen. And I call the dog, and he comes right back. I'm like, oh wow, he's not really running away. So he's sitting next to me. I didn't take him in the house right away. And my son walked up to me, and my little 1.5-year-old son put up his arms and was asking me to put him on this sort of communal trampoline that we have in our neighborhood. And so I do this, and I turn my head for 1 second, and I look, and the dog has run like halfway down a little hill by our house. And I was like, oh no, I call for him, come here, and he takes one look at me and just sprints down the rest of the way down the hill towards these little shops that are down at the bottom of the hill. So I chase him down the hill, and I end up finding him about 15 minutes later. It's a little fiasco. I have to run back and forth and try to find out where he's gone. Turns out he is so friendly and so loving that he had found some other loving people who were holding him for a second. That's how I found him. I saw them sitting there. But in the meantime, in that little 15-minute window, I called the initial foster lady who had fostered the dog to us, and told her, hey, if anyone calls the number on the collar, because he was still wearing that same collar, please let us know, because he just got down the hill. So could you help us find him, basically. Turns out she texts me back and she says, I need to come pick up the dog. I don't think you guys are a good fit for the family. Actually, what actually happened was she told us it's protocol. She has to come pick up the dog, and then it'll be up to the adoption agency, who's not actually her. It's like another organization that she sort of works with, whether we can have the dog back or whatever. Okay, so, and also just a last bit of details for relevance. When she actually came to our house to pick the dog up, during my daughter's birthday party, my husband goes out first to go talk to her and sees her out there, and he got a little upset. He's like, how could you do this? That type of energy, this is not right. Okay, so here's the fun part. Here's how we get into the awakening that has to do with this. So, this situation brought up all the feelings for me, all of my mental projections. What I was feeling was first that, wow, this is so cool. It's like the universe is letting us know that this is our pet now, and you have all those feelings of like attachment. And while I was going through that process, I also was getting downloads that like, hey, it's not really about the dog. It's not about your happiness is not going to come from the dog. I actually wrote out a little post that I was going to make an announcement if we actually decided to adopt the dog. I wrote out a little post that was going to discuss like, hey, we got a new dog, but we know that, happiness doesn't actually come from the dog. This is just energy at play, and we're just enjoying our experience together. So I had that little background, awareness to it. However, still when you're participating in a new animal, like, I did get attached a little bit to the form. So then when the form decides to leave, I'm met with all of my beliefs where it's like, wait a minute, how I thought this was meant to be, right? It was like sort of serendipitous to just meet this dog at the park. Also, a perception that I had was that we had been wronged, that this lady, was not being fair to us, because in my opinion, which of course is just opinion, it's not like awareness or truth or anything like that, it's just surface level opinion, is that a dog getting out is something to be learned from, but not necessarily something that warrants losing your dog over. Anyhow, I also had the perception that maybe I did something wrong. Oh man, I should have just put him on a leash right then and brought him in the house. Or maybe my husband did something wrong. He shouldn't have gotten mad. Maybe that's why she never ended up giving the dog back. Which, by the way, she never ended up giving the dog back. She told the adoption agency, basically, no, I'm keeping the dog, whatever. Okay, so all of these are perceptions running through my mind that end up causing pain. They bring up pain. And what they are touching on are faulty belief systems. Now, let me give an example. You may be watching this and you may have an opinion that's different than mine. You may be like, yeah, you weren't a good dog owner. I'm glad she took that dog from you. So these are in the category of judgments, and so is my judgment that says, I don't think that warranted me losing my dog. That's also a judgment. It's an opinion. It doesn't matter. We can't help our judgments. They're just based off of our conditioning, and they're total distractions. They're totally beside the point. That's just how we play out stories with one another. But what's really happening under the surface is opportunities for awakening. Now, I want to be clear that judgments are not a problem. You don't need to shame yourself. You don't need to try to have no judgments. You just need to let them be what they are so we can play out our stories together. It's not necessarily judgments are never right or wrong. They're in the realm of meaninglessness. So, if you're with me there, let's keep going. So the way that I was able to bring this more into alignment, or the healing that was actually being offered to me, it's not that I'm actually bringing myself into alignment, because that's effortless. This happens on its own as we go through this journey. It doesn't take effort. Life sort of shows you. Life shows you the way and carries you along with it. And what ended up becoming very obvious to me was that, oh wait, no, like there's no way that this lady is like my enemy. There's no way she did anything wrong. We are playing out a story together for both of our ultimate healings and awakenings. And first off, it's always about me. Like her side of the story, her side of the awakening is none of my beeswax. I am not here to teach her anything. And if I am going to have the illusion of teaching her something, that's going to be something that comes naturally through being in relationship with each other. It's not going to come from me trying to like lecture her and whatever. Also, the learning that we're going through is not about becoming better in the world. It's not like, oh, next time I'm going to do this differently so that I have a different outcome. Or I'm going to tell her how to do it differently so that she can create different outcomes for herself. Like, for example, I had the thing, maybe I should just tell the adoption agency that they should discuss with her protocol on when she picks up a dog, because I would hate for this to happen to another family where their dog got out and they lose their dog over it. Maybe either someone should be warned or she should be talked to. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe we do play out that story. Maybe we do feel called to talk to the adoption agency and say that. However, that is also meaningless because it's not about the doing. The doing is always giving us a gift. In this situation, it was perfect for that dog to come and for that dog to go. Okay? And we know that because life shows us. Sometimes when we have these experiences, it looks like we want to fight and we're trying to avoid our own triggers, basically. We're trying to say, hey, I want circumstances to shift so that I can feel better and I can stay in my comfort zone. Rather than look at my beliefs underneath that are being brought up for ultimate healing right now, that are being brought up, and that is the gift. So I saw clearly that my perceptions were that we were all doing something wrong. The blame and the guilt wanted to be projected on everyone around me. It bounced from the lady to my husband to myself. Maybe if I would have just initially adopted the dog and not done a trial adoption, then legally we would have had rights to the dog. Like, all the thoughts are going through your head, going to the past. If I would have just done this differently, none of that matters. That is not your responsibility. Everything is perfect. You're not doing anything wrong. You are not manifesting incorrectly. This is not punishment because you had bad energy or something. This is simply a play of energy to bring up beliefs and to bring yourself further into alignment. So in this scenario, the further into alignment was what I'm just talking about right now. I could see through the illusion that there was nothing wrong here, that no one was doing anything wrong, and I had this amazing opportunity to let the lady off of the hook of guilt that is really me, my guilt, and to let myself off the hook of my own guilt, to let my husband off the hook of my own guilt, which is not really them, right? This is all playing out within my elusive reality. This is my projected dream. And so I'm loosening guilt within my own dream so that I can have a more peaceful dream. Yeah, and it was also a lesson so it was really deepening that realization that my happiness doesn't come from that animal. That animal was just a play of energy that came and went, and it was a gift when it was here, and it was a gift when it was here, and it is a gift when it is not here, okay? And it's not really about the dog, and we can be joyful, really joyful about this. So those were some of the perceptions that I was working through in that scenario. So something that's really helpful for me is to realize that we really are dreaming here. So why would I have a dream where it seemed like I got a dog and then the dog was taken away right away? You know, why would I have this dream? What am I trying to learn underneath the surface here? What is really trying to be realized? And I know that all the players in my dream are really me, and the way that we are having an interaction with each other, it's like our higher selves are celebrating. This is all playing out underneath it for our awakening, and nobody can be a villain in your game unless we make him that way in our mind, which is really delusion, and that's why it doesn't feel good. When someone is being a villain to you, it doesn't feel good, but typically that energy is projected outwards and it seems like they are hurting you, but it's really your faulty perception that is the initial pain. It's just too hard to look at, and it's not ready to be realized, so it needs to be projected outwards onto something. But these scenarios are always our opportunity to undo that faulty thinking and to come back home. What's interesting is when we think, like, the ego likes to say, hey, if I do this, if I let go of projecting all of this guilt and shame and wrongness onto everybody else, then I'm going to become a doormat. I'm going to be walked all over. I'm never going to stand up for myself, ... That is not true in my experience at all. So what ends up happening actually is that we just bring ourselves to center, and then we listen from that place and see, well, what am I guided to do now? And the action steps, if they were dysfunctional to begin with, will probably change. But if it was not dysfunctional, it seems to stay the same. It just has a different energy. For example, in this situation, I felt still guided towards talking with the adoption agency and following up and seeing if there was any legal right to the dog. And all the details don't even matter, they're just story, but I'm just giving an example. But I was able to go through these sort of like action steps the whole time with the purpose for awakening. I am doing this with no attachment. I am doing this with peace in my heart. I'm doing this to see through illusions. I'm doing this without seeing the lady as my enemy, without placing shame or blame on her. Certainly those perceptions sometimes come up, but I know what to do with them. And if anyone here is listening, when you have adept practice at this, you also know what to do with them. They're not a problem. They're actually for healing. So it's beautiful. So here's how the formula kind of works. So we realize that we are drawn towards certain things, and we should honor what we're drawn towards. However, we do that without attachment. We do that without attachment to outcome, because we know it's not really about the thing. Our heart is being drawn, our attention really is being drawn towards certain things because we are going to go through an awakening experience by following that. That's how sort of the guidance system is set up. It is meaningless, the details of that dream. It is meaningless, the details of our interests. And I really mean that. We're not here to like actually create some picture perfect life of our dreams or to save the world or whatever it might seem like why we're attached to what we're going towards in the world. We're actually only here to awaken. That's a big misunderstanding in spirituality a lot of times, and I would say it's like a phase of spirituality that we go through that has a lot to do with like manifesting and being a savior and all of this, and that's beautiful. It's like, if be where you are, you know what I mean? But in my experience, as we get deeper and deeper with this practice, it turns out that everything is simply just for awakening. That's what it's for. So that's why it's not really about the dog. However, because my attention and because I am still drawn towards the possibility of having a dog and that feels good and I really liked that dog, then I still follow through with the action steps to see if there's anything I can do to get that dog. And it turned out legally, since we had handed the dog over to her and now the dog was in her care, legally we had no right to the dog. So the only option for me to have that dog would be to spy on her and break a window and break in and steal the dog. And that was like, no, I'm not guided to do that. I'm going to trust this situation. I'm going to trust that this is best for everyone because I've exhausted all of my possibilities to see if that dog really was meant for us. It's not really about the dog. You see what I mean? Okay, so there's one last thing that wants to come through. So sometimes we think that the learning has to do, and I know I touched on this earlier, but this is a big question that comes up. Well, maybe next time we'll learn to be better. And maybe next time the lady will learn to be better, and the agency will learn to be better, or whatever, whatever the mind can go to. We're only learning to deal with our beliefs. That's it. The doing better in the world, you could say it doesn't matter at all, but you could also say that it happens naturally on its own. And that's because we have this guidance system set up that draws our attention towards the things that we most want. So we probably see that we want, less conflict, or it seems to be that we want, the dog to not run away. So next time, I'll just probably naturally put the leash right on until we know that the dog's not going to run away if we get another dog. Things like that, just examples. But it doesn't really matter because whatever plays out within your dream, you never did anything wrong, and it's all here to help bring up beliefs. That's it. So you don't really have to worry about the doing. Just focus on the beliefs underneath that are being brought up. In my case, in this situation, it was beliefs about projecting separation between me and anybody else around me, and also projecting guilt all over, and also attachment to form for my seeming happiness. And these are very, very core beliefs that we all carry and that are very, very relevant to almost all of our experiences that we go through. The form just is different in all of our experiences. The content of the dream seems to be unique in all of our experiences, right? That's what differs, but the beliefs underneath are very, very much the same. One of my favorite spiritual teachers is Byron Katie, and she says, I think she states, no thought is unique. thoughts are recycled. It's all one mind. We're all sharing this one mind. And so we're just experiencing it in a lot of different forms, but it's the root beliefs and root perspectives that are actually very connected. And we go through and we project it outwards and have all of these separate dreams for one purpose only. And that is to bring ourselves into alignment with what is actually true for, you know, who we are, what is actually true about reality, you could say, about consciousness, about source, okay? When we see things out of alignment with how things actually are, spiritually, or whatever you want to say, in reality, it causes us pain. So that pain is your indicator that some belief within you, some core belief, is being brought to the surface for reevaluation. It is a gift. It is a literal gift, because as we allow that process to unfold, we are greeted with more of our good feelings, more of our bliss, our connectedness, all of that stuff, because that's also our emotional guidance saying, ding, 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 you are hitting the mark here. You are hitting the mark in terms of perception. So this good feeling, here's another thing here. This good and bad feeling is never dependent on form. So if you are feeling a high because things are going your way, that's not a bad thing. It's not something to be like, oh, I'm so attached to form right now because I'm so happy that things are going my way. No, just soak it up, but with that backdrop of understanding that that feeling is not actually coming from the thing, just like I did with the dog in the beginning. It was like, okay, I'm feeling this excitement feeling, but I know it's not actually coming from the thing. That's because everything changes, okay? And if we think it's actually coming from the thing, we're setting ourselves up for a mental trap. And you know the opposite is coming, because that's form. You have a body once and then it dies. I mean, we can't even be attached to our body, guys. Everything changes. So enjoy everything. Enjoy the form. It's not a bad thing to enjoy, but just know that it's really our core perceptions and our core beliefs that are going to be the work that brings us always, sustainably, consistently, brings us closer to who we are and is our actual source of joy, which is what we are. So anyways, that about sums it up. Thank you for listening. What else do I want to say? Yeah, if this resonates with you and you want to speak to me, feel free to message me or sign up for a session. I do sessions by donation. So yeah, I really enjoy it, like genuinely. So anyways, I do it all by donation. You can find, I'll place the link in the comments below, or you can check out my website, angelaroseyoung.com. And yeah, that's about it. See you next time.